You're listening to Badass Ladyfolk, a podcast about socially engaged women and non-binary femmes kicking buns, big and small. I'm your host, Christine Sloan Stoddard. That intro music came from the song Talking Hands by Toxic Moxie. As previously mentioned, this is a reboot of my Radio Free Brooklyn show, The Badass Ladyfolk of Brooklyn. Now, Quail Bell Press and Productions is producing this podcast for and about incredible women and non-binary femmes from around the world, not just Brooklyn. This episode, my guest is actress, director, and producer, Sarah Wagner. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Christine.
Yeah, of course. So happy to see you over Zoom. Not that our listeners will see you, but it's also nice to hear your voice. All right, now for some bio time. Bio time. Sarah Wagner is producer of Drawing Cats Productions and a New York City-based director and actor. In the last year, Sarah has produced 3 staged readings, 7 one-act productions, and a Black Lives Matter virtual protest. Dear listeners, I'll be dropping links to Sarah's work in the show notes, so definitely check out what she's got going on. For background, I met Sarah in A Sketch of New York, a sketch show produced and directed by Joe Donazzi at the Producers Club in Manhattan in January 2020, back when we did theater in person. We friended each other on Facebook, as you do, and as I wrapped up my last couple of productions at the Broadway Comedy Club and Theater for the New City before the pandemic hit, I took note of what Sarah was doing. And then once the city shut down, I really took note of what she was doing, and I was impressed. So, Sarah, what was your aha moment for starting Drawing Cats Productions?
Yeah, thank you so much. Honestly, it was the people around me, my friends, other artists like yourself that I had friended on Facebook who were struggling after the COVID-19 pandemic started. It really taught me a lot about myself because since moving to New York, the one thing I think people always told me was, well, if you're not getting cast, if you're not getting work, make your own, direct your own, write your own pieces. And I always went, I have nothing worthwhile to share of my own. I can't do it. I'm going to apply for other people's things because I can't do it. But then March happened, and I think we were halfway through April, and I just noticed so much sadness, so much devastation in the lives of people around me. People were confiding in me about how much they just wish they could do some sort of live performance, live theater again. And in an effort to find a solution, I went, well, they can. I can do something. I can direct something for you, and we'll live stream it, and we can do theater. And it was really an effort to spread joy in the people around me.
Yeah, I love that. I love the generosity of spirit and that impulse to want to help other artists too. That's great. So you based the name on a Japanese fairy tale. So story time, what's that tale?
Yes, for everyone who's always wondered what Drawing Cats Productions means. Well, when we were about to, I say we, my partner, my fiance, Dalton Gordon, and I, prior to directing our first show, we sat down at the dinner table and I said, we have to call it something. We have to have a name. We have to have a name for, if we're producing something, we have to have a name. And I'm getting panicked, and every idea I think of is just lame, and I'm getting emotional. I'm sitting there eating my dinner and in a pout. And Dalton, in an effort to cheer me up, starts telling me this story, completely unrelated, mind you. And it's about and I might mess up some details, so I apologize if there's any Japanese fairy tale aficionados listening that are going to say that detail's wrong. But he told me this story about this little boy who lived in Japan. His parents were farmers, and all this little boy wanted to do was draw pictures of cats all day, every day. It's all he would do. And his parents would try to get him to farm, to help them out, clean around the house, work, do something to earn his keep, to help out. And he wouldn't do anything. He would draw cats all day, every day. And in complete desperation and frustration, they send him to the monastery, and they say, okay, kid, if you're not going to work, if you're not going to farm or do something useful, then go to the monastery. Maybe you could become a monk. So they send him to the monastery. He gets there, and he still won't do anything. He won't pray. He won't recite the sutras. He won't do anything that's required of him. He will only draw pictures of cats. So finally, the people at the monastery say, sorry, kid, you can't stay here. If you do not have it in you to be a monk, you have to go. And he's like, well, I can't go back home without a job, without something. I'm going to disgrace my family. So the monk says, well, there's a hermitage on the other side of town. Go there. There's maybe somebody there who can help you. But on your way, in your travels, beware of the giant goblin rat. Keep to small places. Do not be out on the road at night. Goblin rat is dangerous. So he says, oh, okay. And he goes to the hermitage, and he gets there, and there's no one there. But instead of going home or going back to the monastery, he draws pictures of cats all over the entire hermitage. And before you know it, it's sunset and nightfall. And he's like, well, I guess I have to stay here. And he makes a fire for himself, draws pictures of more cats. And then when it's time to sleep, he finds a little closet to hide into, because he remembers the advice to stay to small spaces. So he goes into this little closet and curls up to sleep. And then in the middle of the night, he hears horrific sounds. He hears gnarling, he hears scratching, he hears hissing and fighting, and he's terrified. And then when he wakes up the next morning and leaves his little closet, he notices that the giant goblin rat has been slain. It's lying dead by the fire. And he looks at all of the little pictures of the cats that he drew, and they all have little blood stains around their little cat mouths, because the cats came alive in the middle of the night and saved him from the goblin rat. And the villagers came and they praised him for slaying this beast that had been plaguing the villages. And he became a very well-known and respected artist and was able to provide for his family by drawing pictures of cats. It's really a beautiful story about how people who may not have respected art as much in the beginning grew to respect it, and how the art was able to save this boy's life in particular, but also the village from this goblin rat that was plaguing them. And I heard this story, and I just immediately went, we're Drawing Cats Productions. This is perfect. We draw cats. We save people. We inspire people because we're creating. And I thought it was absolutely perfect.
Yeah, I love that story. You're right. It is perfect. It is the perfect story for any artist, but especially now during this time when so many of us, even a year later, feel helpless. Maybe not always, but definitely once in a while, right?
Yeah.
Like we're useless. We don't have practical skills. Why aren't people paying us?
I should just give this up and do something that makes me real money, but no, keep drawing cats.
No, it's a beautiful story. I'm so glad that you heard that story at that time too.
Yeah, and it's so funny because in my head, I went, oh, Dalton's telling me this because he thinks this will be a good title. I was trying to decide on the perfect title, and I went, he thought of it. And then afterwards he was like, oh no, I just wanted to cheer you up. I thought this would be something to help you smile and inspire you. I wasn't even thinking about the title, but it works. It's perfect.
Yeah, well, that's one of the beauties of storytelling, is that people take what they want from stories. And for you, the takeaway was, oh, art saves. Let's do this.
And that's why we do what we do.
So what was the first production that Drawing Cats put on?
Yeah, so our first production was a staged at home reading. So it was a staged reading at home, my little play on words, of a one-act play called Curios by Chuck Gordon. The name sounds familiar. It is Dalton's dad. Okay. He so kindly let us produce his work, and it was wonderful because we were family, we had the rights and privilege to be able to put that work on. But it's a wonderful piece. It's up on YouTube, public. Anyone can enjoy it. I don't even know how to describe it without giving too much away about like what happens. But I'll tell you, the playwright's inspiration was, the start of the play begins, the stage directions say "at rise disaster."
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and he kind of went from there. Like, he has this bar with the TV smashed, a woman crying, a white man painted red to support the Redskins sports team, and then there is a Native American man who sees this. Um, it's been so long since I directed. I think he has a gun. I should know this, but it's been almost a year. And he had this painting, he had this image in his mind, and he wanted to write that story.
Yeah, well, that's great for setting the scene for sure. How did you find out about the play? Did he come to you with the idea when you started drawing cats, or were you asking around for plays? How did that work?
I had read them. Yeah, because he was family. I had read the plays in the past. So when I was trying to figure out what show you were gonna do, I went, oh, let me ask. I bet I could do one of these plays, one of these, because they're really wonderful. All of Chuck's work is something that I find completely smart and engaging, and it was such a joy to be able to direct it, even though it was virtual.
Neat. So, listeners have probably experienced some form of virtual theater, but I shouldn't assume that. I wouldn't assume that because our listeners are really just all kinds of badass feminists and women lovers, sisterhood lovers.
Woo-hoo!
Oh, yeah. So, virtual theater can look so many different ways too. Whether or not someone has seen a virtual production, it doesn't mean that that one production is like everything, right? Or that every production looks that way. So, what do your productions look like? What are the different forms they have taken?
Yeah. So the one thing that was really important to me was to make as many of my productions as possible live. There are a couple exceptions. We're going to talk about it a little bit later, but one of the shows I did with Rogue Theater Festival was not live because of the scheduling. We filmed it in a theater, so that was filmed and then like streamed 2 months later, which is weird. Watching something you did 2 months later. But for all of the things that I am directing and streaming, I really try to make them live. I think even though we're not necessarily sharing the same space and the same air, there's something electric about a live performance. There's something electric between the actors of not knowing if someone's going to go up on a line, or often they do in most live things that I have directed for Zoom so far. Somebody does, and it's not something the audience would ever notice, like in typical theater, but you have that moment between actors, that connection that they've built over rehearsals where they're able to cover for each other or able to ad lib something to fix the moment. And there's an electricity there. There's trust between the people that they're able to do that. And that's all things that I think come out when you're doing a live performance. And while audience members might not be able to put their finger exactly on what that is, I think that electricity is apparent when you're watching something, even though it's virtual. Having it be live to me just is as close as I think I can get to being back in a physical theater. So that's something that's always been important to me. And the past year, as I've kept directing virtually, I've started adding in more elements. The most recent show that I did, I've worked in sound cues. I don't have as much experience in sound, but I went and I learned how to do some basic sound editing, and I got the cues that I needed, and I built soundscapes, and I figured out how to share the sound over Zoom and fade it in and fade it out so that I could have sound cues play just like you were in a theater. And I built a playbill. Like there's a website where you can make your own like little virtual book. So I made like a playbill for the show. We had, one of the things I was struggling with in the last show was, okay, you can't see the set. There is no set design I can necessarily do for all of these things. We hit that technological boundary. But what I thought I might do is for a pre-show slideshow, I had somebody build pictures that resembled what the set might look like if it were in person. And I had it like play through like a little slideshow before the show with the name of the show, the name of the actors, and then like the little blurb in the stage directions. Because with the stage reading, the first show that I did, we had someone read the stage directions, okay, this takes place at a bar, this is happening. But for the most recent show, I had it typed over this image so that it's kind of reminiscent to that feeling of you're waiting for the show to begin and you're staring at the stage and the set all ready to go and taking pictures of the set design before the show begins. So I wanted to recreate that, and I'm constantly looking for little ways like that to recreate the feelings that we get when we go to the theater.
Yeah, well, that's very clever, and that's fantastic that you've also used this time to acquire new skills, learn things that maybe you didn't learn in school or on any job, but hey, got some downtime now.
This whole experience, honestly.
Yeah. So actually on that note, what were some of the creative challenges that you faced, creative and technical, I should probably say, challenges that you faced and choices that you made for drawing cats early on?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think technical challenges are the ones that come immediately to my brain. Wi-Fi is always a challenge. You never know, especially with live performance. I mean, if it's pre-filmed and somebody's computer just shuts off on them, then you can just re-record it at a different time. But if it's live and someone freezes, what do you do? And thank goodness I haven't had like a super bad, like somebody's frozen for 5 minutes happen. Thank goodness. I crossed my fingers. You cannot see. I hope that never happens. But it could. And that's, other than little things like maybe plugging your computer into an Ethernet cable. I recently got a new computer that doesn't have a plug for an Ethernet cable anymore because we're moving into a digital age. So that's not even an option for me. But moving closer to the Wi-Fi router, and sometimes the internet just gets the better of you and somebody lags. And the actors all do a wonderful job of covering when that happens. If it's now there are shows being written that take place over Zoom, so I give actors agency. Like if somebody's frozen and the given circumstances of their lives is that it's a Zoom call, well then you can absolutely say, hey, you're frozen. And recognize that. But if it's something that doesn't take place over Zoom, and I do try to direct shows that don't necessarily take place on Zoom, then it can be a little bit more of a difficulty. I guess that would be a creative challenge, is picking shows, because there are shows that I've come across I would love to do, but if I can't do them justice over Zoom, then I can't do them at this time. And there are some shows that I read that were not intended for Zoom, and I put them in a Zoom format, and I go, wow, oh, this works, this changes it, but it works. It's amazing how adaptable this script is. And then there's other scripts that might require a lot of intimacy or a lot of stage combat or choreography or visuals that I can't at this moment think of a way to replicate that would do the story justice. And at the end of the day, I have to think, what does the script justice? How is the best way to tell this story to people, to tell these character stories to people? And am I able to do that? And if I'm not able to do that at this time, then I put it on a back burner or pass on it for the time being until I feel like I'm able to tackle that and do that story the justice it deserves.
Yeah, no, I would love to hear some of your thoughts about what makes for a good Zoom play. Like, what are some of the elements you might see in a script, or even just a concept that would work well on Zoom, even if they don't take place in Zoom?
Yeah. Oh, now I am thinking. what makes for, I mean, as I kind of mentioned, things that don't make, I think it's easier to say what doesn't make, like something that
Sure.
a lot of contact with another person.
Like physical contact.
Physical contact. Like there's a certain, to a certain extent, you can have somebody, like I can hold a cup and pass my hand off screen, and somebody can have a similar cup and pick it up off their screen, and it looks like I handed you the cup through the Zoom.
Yeah.
But if there's a lot of physical contact, there gets to be a point where it's a lot harder to replicate. Some things, what are some things I've had to deal with? Well, some shows that I have seen, talking about virtual theater, I've seen other people who have the actors film it themselves, like pre-record their entire show as if it's one big monologue. You're not playing with anyone, you're filming it, and then they take that film and they edit it together. So they'll edit the two people and they'll edit the person's hands like onto the other person's, one actor's hand onto like the other actor's body, like through technical editing software. And that's really cool because it does give you some more freedom with the physicality that you can do. But that takes away the live aspect, because that's all pre-filmed, pre-recorded. And as I mentioned, for me personally, the live aspect is something that I really treasure.
Yeah.
So
the pre-recorded aspect, then it really does get more into film and video language than it does theater language and what we think of as live performance. So I understand why you have this need to stick to live performance. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I had words about an example of of a show that ended up working well for Zoom, and at the moment I lost my words.
No, that's me. That's all on me. I'm so sorry. Okay, well, if it comes back to you, let me know. Could you talk about some of the highlights of running Drawing Cats?
Oh, absolutely. Biggest highlight, hands down, has been meeting people. One of the incredible joys of doing this in a virtual age is getting to work with people all over the place who I would never had a chance to work with just in New York City. I've gone to cast actors from Chicago. I've gone to cast actors from Texas, California, Florida. I've gotten to meet playwrights in the search for new work to produce. I've come into contact with some really wonderful individuals that have become friends of mine now, that we're continuing to collaborate on future projects, people that have really enriched my life in such a fulfilling way that I would have never met if never put in this circumstance. Yeah, I know I've met so many people in the last year. It's incredible. And to think that I've met all these people stuck in quarantine in a bedroom is really fascinating to me, but it happened and I am incredibly grateful for it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. How have you met most of them?
Auditions. I've put auditions now on Playbill and on Backstage in an effort to, because that's when Drawing Cats started out, it was mostly in a close-knit group of actors that I knew. The first couple shows, I didn't even hold auditions. I just went, who could do this part? When I read a script, not everyone does this. I've talked to Dalton and he's like, not me, I can't do this. But I read a script and almost immediately I hear a voice in my head. It's like the character's talking and I go, whose voice is that? And I go, oh, that's my friend Rebecca's voice. I hear her voice as I read this first read through. So I'm able to really quickly almost be like, yeah, no, I think this person really could bring something unique and special to this role. And then in an effort to expand and meet new people and also give opportunities to different people of different backgrounds, I actually haven't worked with anyone outside of the United States yet, so I would love to. Oh my goodness, if you hit me up, partnership. But I've advertised on Playbill and Backstage, and I've met so many wonderful people, so many actors, primarily from those websites that I enjoy working with, that have been so professional and so kind, and that I would cast again and again. I have friends of mine that work in other theaters and other casting agencies that will watch and be like, oh, who's this person you cast? Tell me about working with them. And it's so cool to be able to be such a positive influence, and the connections that are made between people. As for playwrights, there's a website called New Play Exchange, I think.
Yeah.
And I made a producer's account on there for Drawing Cats Productions, and I met a wonderful playwright through there. A bunch of playwrights have submitted, and I just love reading work. That's another highlight, is getting to read so many new plays. I mean, as an actor as well, it's so enriching being able to be one of the first, like, this is a new play. In 10 years, you don't know where this is going to be, but I'm one of the first people reading this. It's so enriching. Also, early on in quarantine, there was this thing called the Quarantine Bake Off, where these group of students actually would give like a set of words, and you'd have to write a play including like all 6 words, and then submit it to them, and then like the winners would be streamed on YouTube. And I started following this page in an effort of like, maybe I'll write something. And I ended up meeting somebody else, and we've actually worked together pretty consistently since June up until now. And she's currently directing a cabaret that we have in production. So that is somebody who I don't think I ever would have met if not for COVID, who has become such a foundational part of Drawing Cats Productions, and who I can rely on to help with advertising, to help with directing. So yeah, those are 2 websites, or 3 websites: Playbill, Backstage, New Play Exchange. If you haven't heard of them and you're interested in New Play Exchange, if you just want to read new works, if you're not affiliated, if you're not a director, you're not an actor, but you say, I love reading and I'd like to read some new plays, you can make a reader's account on there and read new plays as they're being written, which is so phenomenal.
Yeah, no, it is. That's the sort of thing that you wouldn't get to do unless you were in school or a playwriting development program at a theater, and those kind of aren't happening right now. Okay, I don't want to put you on the spot again, but I am tempted to know just a little bit about if, in trying to find new people and new plays, you changed any of your social media behavior from before the pandemic. Like, not just in terms of promotion. I think that's what a lot of creative people have done differently during this time. But in terms of making connections, thinking about future creative projects, are there, like, what kind of research have you done, or what kind of different connections or strategies have you had in mind? Or has it been more random, like, oh, this thing came up in my feed and I can use that, or, oh, this person knows so-and-so, I want to see who they are, what?
Yeah. So in terms of social media, I mean, I have my private accounts that are for me as a person, and I don't really change what I do there, because you have to be my friend to be on my private account, or at least work together. Once I've worked with somebody and directed them, and then the show's over, I totally fine having that network opportunity, sending them that friend request. We're friends now. I'm somebody who, from a very young age, I've been told I could befriend literally anybody. But then I also have public pages, like the Drawing Cats page, which is public. And that definitely is something, I'm a lot more hyper aware of what I post, what I say, what should be posted. We've been learning about marketing and publicity. Like you mentioned, I knew nothing about marketing and publicity before this pandemic, and there were so many free workshops and free seminars about it, and I went to every single one I possibly could, and I've learned a lot about it. I have much knowledge I've yet to even put out into the world, because there's so much that I've learned in terms of free classes, which is another wonderful perk. Like, not to say that the pandemic has been devastating for a lot of people, but the amount of free resources that have come out of it has been incredible.
Yeah.
That wouldn't normally be available to people. But yeah, I guess in terms of finding people, this is the first time I've ever actually had to run auditions and cast something from like a large pool of strangers and individuals. And up to this point, I'd been an actor submitting. And so it was learning experience for me being on the other side of the table. Being able to see, like, I've definitely changed the way I submit as an actor based on submissions that I've received as a casting director and as a director. But I think, I don't know.
That's fine. That's enough. I got what I needed. You got my curiosity, at least for the time being. Tell me about Sunset Limited at the 13th Street Rep Theater, part of the Rogue Theater Festival, and your New York City directorial debut.
Yes. Oh, I love Sunset Limited. Also, how wild is it that my in-person, like, went to a theater and directed a New York City debut happened during a pandemic when theaters are closed. It was wild.
So how did that work? How did you find out about the festival? Everything. I want to hear everything.
All right. So Rogue Theater Festival, absolutely incredible. I highly recommend checking them out. They're such a wonderful organization. They're actually accepting submissions for plays for the upcoming season. So if you're a writer, be aware of them. But a colleague of mine, Michelle Prevette, we've worked together a lot in the past. And she was also a mentor for me as I was in college. So we've known each other for a little while. She had submitted her play, Sunset Limited, to Rogue Theater Festival. They accept submissions from new playwrights as sort of like a contest, I guess. And they read all the submissions and they pick the winners of this get to have their play produced in New York City. And typically when there's not a pandemic, it's in person. You go to 13th Street Theater. It's like almost like a Fringe festival, I want to say, but not quite. Like, you can go and you could see a bunch of different one acts that are brand new, never been produced before, which is such an exciting experience. So Michelle got her play chosen to be produced, was ecstatic immediately. It was like, Sarah, I want you to direct it because I've seen what you've been doing with Drawing Cats, and I think you'd be a good fit. And I went, oh my gosh, I would love to. And then Rogue Theater Festival said, okay, we could do this two ways. We can have it be a virtual Zoom show, or if you're in the area, you can come to the 13th Street Theater and film it there, and we will take the film and show it with the rest of the shows. And I immediately went, I've done the Zoom thing. I would like to do the in-person thing. Let us do the in-person thing. So jumping into like the day of the show, it was so wild because any other show that I've directed or performed in usually has about a tech week. Anyone who's in theater knows the term tech week. For anyone who doesn't, it's before a show, you have about a week of rehearsals that are primarily the introduction of different technical elements. It's the first time lights are often brought into the equation, microphones and sound, cues, music, costumes, all these different things are brought in 1 week, and you have a week to kind of work out the kinks, work out the timing of when a cue or a light turns on or a sound turns on, and really make everything flawless, everything flow. I didn't have that because of the time. Everyone was allotted an hour and a half in the theater space.
What? Wait, how long was the play? How many minutes total?
20 minutes. It was 20-minute one act.
So 20 minutes was part of your hour and a half block?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. So we had our own props. We couldn't use, in the past, typically you're allowed to use the theater's props if they have any furniture or anything, but because of COVID, you can't. people can't be touching things. So, you know, they had it worked down to a system where a show would load in, they'd have their own props and costumes and set pieces, everything they needed. They'd load it in, set everything up on the stage, set up the camera, set up lights, set up sound, and film it. They do like one run through, like a test run to just like test the cues, make sure everything goes, and then 1 to 2 like filmed solid run throughs if you could fit 2. We only got 1. But we 1 to 2 like filmed run throughs of the show, and then you leave, and then they sanitize, Lysol everything, and time for the next show's hour and a half to pop in. And like they had it down to a science. Like if you were coming in, you enter through the front door and you'd exit out the back door as somebody was like coming in through the front door. Like, so you weren't like, people weren't like coming into contact. There were masks, unless aside from when the camera was rolling, the actors had their masks off when the camera was rolling. But other than that, everyone had masks and gloves. Like I felt so safe, and it was very professionally handled. But the idea of like having an hour and a half to just set everything up, an hour and a half in the space, never having rehearsed in the space before, was definitely a challenge. But I'm jumping around. That's essentially how the process worked in terms of Rogue Theater Festival.
Well, so then how did you prepare your cast for this event? So tell me about the rehearsal process and coordinating logistics with them so that they would be ready for this hour and a half of time you had in the theater.
Yes. All right. So I wanted to cast somebody who I knew and had worked with before, especially for this project, a project where it comes down to an hour and a half, and where things were so unconventional. I wanted somebody that I knew was professional and responsible, who I can really trust. So I went with an actress that I had cast in my first show that I mentioned, Curios. She was cast in that show. Denise Stephanie Mendoza, wonderful human being. So I immediately went, okay, she's my Gabriel. I have that, as if she accepts. If she doesn't accept, I find somebody else, but she's my Gabriel. And then I had to find her counterpart, Devil Bill Adams. And I started looking through everyone I knew, anyone I'd worked with before, trying to find the right person. And then I remembered that Denise's partner, boyfriend, I believe they are boyfriend, girlfriend currently, Spencer, Stevie, is also an actor. And I found him on Backstage. I watched his reel and I was like, okay. And luckily they both accepted the role, which was amazing because they lived together as a couple. So there wasn't that sense, like in rehearsals, they didn't necessarily need to have their masks on around each other. They could get close to each other in a safe way because they lived together and they were already sharing that same space. So instead of broadening people's COVID bubbles, being able to work with a real couple worked out so wonderfully. And also the chemistry between them was perfect in the script. So ideal choice. Most of the rehearsals took place over Zoom. But you know, they'd set up a little cell phone on like a tripod and in their living room. And as myself and as Michelle would chip into the budget to order like set pieces, like we ordered like a little like cheapo bar from Walmart for them. They'd ship it to their house and they'd set it up in their apartment and be like watching them through like watching a film through a TV, being able to watch them work. But they were close enough that I was able to direct them in an easier way. Like they were able to make contact with each other. They were able to really do things to each other in ways that you can if they were separate.
Right.
And then I was able to visit a couple times and we had a few in-person rehearsals before the show. I want to say we had a total of 3 or 4 in-person rehearsals before the hour and a half big filming day at the theater. But it was nice. We had the set, we had the bar, we had props. I went thrift shopping. They went thrift shopping for costumes, and we all were able to have, aside from the actual space they walked on and lights, we were able to have a pretty clear picture of how the show was going to go before we got to the theater.
That's great. That's all incredibly organized. Again, applause for you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so then what did you learn from directing Sunset Limited, and what sort of plays do you hope to direct in the future?
Yeah. Honestly, the biggest thing I learned was trusting myself and trusting my gut and having self-confidence. Like that moment of an hour and a half and having people approach me it's an hour and a half, but at least an hour, well, we'll say 40 minutes minimum of that is performance. We had about 20 to 30 minutes to set it up. So 20, 30 minutes of which lights do you want here? What color lights? What part of the stage do you want to set it up in? That's something that I hadn't even thought about before I got there. Because it was filmed, like in my head, I'm picturing like, oh yeah, they do it on the stage, you face the audience, blah, blah, blah. Like through a real show, but I got there, and because it was filmed, they were like, oh no, we could set the tripod up anywhere. We can have it. And we ended up doing it like facing, so like instead of standing on the stage facing the audience, they were standing on like stage right facing stage left, and we set up the camera on stage left, so you saw like the brick wall on the side, and so it was oriented in a different way than I didn't even know that was an option. Like, oh, of course it's film, you don't have to do it in the typical proscenium way. Yeah. But we've all flipped on its side. But I had to make a lot of snap decisions in about 20 minutes, and I'm used to in my directing experience giving everything like a fair go. Like, I'm very much somebody who'd be like, oh, the pinks or the blues. Well, let's try pinks one day and blues the next day, and then I'll pick which one I liked better after watching them both. And there was no time for that. It was, I needed to make a decision right then and there, pink or blue, and it had to come out of my mouth like that. And it was such, I kept coming back to like this little self mantra of, well, I always ask myself, what's best for the show? Right. Which decision, which thing will make this show more accessible to the most people? And I kept telling myself, trust my gut. It's what I am somebody who's competent. I'm somebody who's smart. I'm somebody who's experienced, and I can make an educated decision right now. Yeah. And I walked out of that theater a different person after making so many snap decisions. And not all of them were good ones. There were definitely things where I went, oh yeah, should have made the other one, should have went the other way. But here we are, and we're going to work with it. We're going to keep moving forward and make this as best as it can be. And every show after that, I feel like I've had a little bit more confidence in myself, even just in daily life, walking around, going to the grocery store. I feel like I've been a more confident person after that day.
That's a great point. Well, actually, on that note, so directing's still very much a male-dominated field, and I think that does unfortunately go to your point about confidence and how often little girls are not raised to have the same kind of confidence and self-esteem as little boys. So what attracted you to directing, and what advice do you have for other women who are interested or might possibly be interested in directing?
Oh, yes. Okay. Well, you say possibly. Like, when I did not think I would be a director. I did not think I would be a producer. If you talked to me 4 years ago and said, Sarah, you're going to have your own production company, I would have said, hell no, I'm not interested in that at all. I'm not an entrepreneur. No, I'm not a producer. But here I am, and I love it. So definitely try it. Definitely try it, and try it again. Because first time I directed, I went, this was stressful. There's a lot of responsibility on my shoulders, and I am stressed. And then the second time I directed, I went, I'm stressed. And then the show happens, and I went, oh my gosh, these people created this. Like, I'm watching my actors perform, and I went, they watching them grow from day one to day whatever the show happened was incredible. I witnessed growth happen before my eyes in a way you don't witness when you're the actor. You can't watch yourself when you're the actor, but when you're the director, you watch somebody grow every day. And it's like having a baby. It's like having a child, like every day, even though they're only growing minuscule amounts each day. You don't necessarily, every day your child looks a little bit taller. And I'm not a mother, but I have family who are babiys, and I go, "You're so tall." I visit my niece and my nephew, and every month I'm like, "Why have you grown 10 feet? Stay baby." But it's that sort of pride watching an actor perform that you've directed and that you've seen how much they've discovered over a course of a rehearsal process is so humbling and so mind-blowing. And I was so proud of them. And I went, "Oh, I love watching people perform like this." And then the third time I directed, I was sold. I was like, this is something I want to do. This is, approaching a piece with a set idea of how you expect it's going to go, set goals. Like, this is my goal. This is my approach. This is the message I want to convey to the audience. Okay, here we go. And then watching all the surprising things that actors and the designers have to bring to it, things that I never would have expected. People come in and they make a choice that completely surprises me. Like, I did not imagine the show, that line. I did not imagine that line being performed in that way at all. But it's wonderful, and it's better than anything my mind could have came up with. And being able to witness these discoveries and be surprised, coming in each day with a goal. Like, okay, my goal for today is to get this scene to like 7 out of 10. And then my goal is completely exceeded. And I'm like, I love you guys, you're amazing. It's such a wonderful experience being, like, I feel like I plant the seed, but it's only the partnership and the collaboration with playwrights, actors, designers, stagehands, stage managers, all of the people who water that seed and make it grow into something so much better than I could have imagined it to be. And that is so addicting for me in every way.
Well, I was going to say, maybe give yourself a little bit more credit. You're still, as the director, leading a lot of that growth and then providing feedback as discoveries are made.
Oh, absolutely.
Hey,
absolutely.
I like what you did there, but maybe with this, you need to continue with that. Whatever,
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Not every choice that's brought into the rehearsal room is the best choice, but that's that is my job to I am the audience before the audience comes in, and I am able to direct it into a direction that is more entertaining and more interesting to watch. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm talking best case scenario. The moments that make me come back for more are the super special ones.
Yeah.
But advice, oh my gosh. All right. Definitely, like, I mean, when I directed my first production with Drawing Cats, I mean, gosh, when I directed before Drawing Cats, I did not think that I would be here. I did not think that I would know playwrights from across the country, actors from across the country. Did not think that I would be starting to like build a company in the sense of like income, like not necessarily towards me, but Drawing Cats Productions is starting to gain some revenue to the point where I might be able to start paying actors. That's my number one goal at this point, is the next show I direct, I want to be able to pay all of my actors like a decent stipend for their work and their time. And the fact that that's starting to come into fruition is incredible.
Yeah.
But you don't actually have to have that goal to get started, because I didn't. I went, well, what's something that I can do right now that will help people? So my advice would be to direct something. Get your group of friends together. They don't even have to be actors necessarily, as long as they have an appreciation for the spoken word, for new work, for old work. if you trust them to read something, get them around on a Zoom call, have them read something, and direct them, see what happens if what different ways you can communicate with them to get them to take direction. And it's definitely a learning process. I mean, myself directing Curios and myself directing Sunset Limited were two very different Sarahs, and I learn each production different ways to communicate with people and what ways of communication work. And it's different for each actor. Some actors communicate differently than others, and it's very much being aware in that moment of, okay, that what I just said did not click for you. Let me find another way to convey what I want to convey without prescribing, without saying you're going to do this. Like, I always try to make it a little bit more like, I try not to prescribe specific things. It's more, I try to go more in the direction of, let's try a different choice. Can you make a different choice than what you just made, as opposed to do this thing indefinitely? But definitely start out directing, have fun with it. It doesn't have to be anything big. Also watch other directors. Something that I watch and I rewatch because my brain is hot mush and I forget things a lot. So I have to like rewatch it every like few months. But there's this wonderful documentary called The Top Dog Diaries. And it's about a really wonderful playwright, Susan Laurie Parks. And it's a documentary about her play and its trip to getting produced. But you get to watch. There's footage of the process of how she communicates with the director, how the director communicates with her, communicates with the actors, and it's so eye-opening, and it's such a wonderful documentary. I love it so much. So find documentaries that have directors directing actors and listen. Okay, how did that director talk to them? Okay, did they take the note? Did they seem like they took the note, or did they not? Did the director have to give the note again in a different way? Also, if you're an actor, or even if you're not an actor, if you want to direct, start acting, start auditioning for some things for fun, and pay attention to how your directors talk to you, how they talk to the other people. And each director, I think, has their own different phraseology. And me as a director is kind of an amalgamation of all the directors that I've had, moments that have worked for me, moments where somebody has given me a note and I went, oh, the way they explained that was so clear for me. I understood that. And I really liked this exercise. I'm going to use this with other people. And I feel like I'm going in circles. But come into contact with other directors. Also read a lot. Read plays. If you want to direct, read a lot of plays. Classics, read new plays, new play exchange, read all the new plays that you can. And don't just read them for enjoyment. Like, I feel like first read throughs always reading to see how a play infects you. What does it make you feel? Yeah. What did you enjoy about it? And then read it a second time and try to see what is this play about? What is this play about in one word? And try to figure that out for each play that you read. Those would be my three advice.
Yeah, no, that's all wonderful advice. The one I don't hear often enough is read. It's true. And that's great advice for really any profession. Just keep learning, just keep trying to find out more and get different ideas. Definitely.
Absolutely. And not just plays too. Like, that's probably the thing that I need to work on most as a director. I mean, I grew up in Pennsylvania. I live in New York area now. And I've gone on a road trip to the Grand Canyon and back, and that was my big adventure of my lifetime. But I've directed shows that have taken place in Texas, and I've never really been to Texas. There are people in the shows that I haven't exactly met before. But if you read literature, if you read the bestsellers lists, and if you keep reading and then you go to direct a show, you'll recognize, oh, I read a book that took place in this area, and I recognize, or I know this character because I read about someone so similar in this other book. and I remember their motivations in the book, and I can see how it would apply to this character. And the more you read, the more you'll get to know different characters, different people, different places, and be able to tie them all together.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, no matter how many adventures you've had, you can't do everything in life, and reading can take you all sorts of places.
Yes.
So I also wanted to talk about your fiance,
Oh.
Dalton Gordon, and how he helps you, how you collaborate on drawing cats. I just want to know more about that relationship. A lot of people say that they can't work with their romantic partners. So I'm also curious, like, what makes it so that you can work together?
Yes. Yeah, I would not say everybody could work with their romantic partner, but I'm really blessed that I can. Dalton is so wonderful, and he's an actor. He's also a director. He's actually he's a really into stage combat. That's kind of where we differ. I enjoy stage combat, but he wants to be a fight choreographer and choreograph movement and fight sequences. But I feel like we know how to fill in each other's gaps, I guess, creatively. He's a bit older than me, and he's lived in different places. So a lot of times he's able to fill in gaps that I have in knowledge about a certain character or a certain place, or and vice versa. I feel like we complement each other just perfectly. We also speak the same language, I think, in terms of directing. I mean, we differ a little bit, but we're both foundationally come from a Stanislavski approach to directing. If for anyone who doesn't know that, it's an acting approach. One of them, there's a few: Stanislavski, Meisner, Hagen, but we're both firmly rooted in Stanislavski. So even though we might do things in completely different ways, because we were rooted in that same approach, we understand each other in a way. Like, we understand what we're trying to do with actors if we're directing at the same time. It's like, I understand what he's saying, what he's trying to communicate. Actually, and believe it or not, he is in grad school right now. He is doing all of the homework all of the time. So Drawing Cats Productions has been a one-woman show since about Sunset Limited. My last two productions that I've directed have been just me. He did design the poster for Sunset Limited, which I'm really proud of. I do not have the knowledge in the graphic design. He has the knowledge in the graphic design that I don't have. But so I've been taking a little bit more of a hands-on approach with Drawing Cats, and he's been supporting me when I'm so blessed to have somebody when a rehearsal ends and I just need to talk about it, somebody that understands what I'm saying. Like, I feel like some people, I know a lot of people feel like they can't have a significant other who's also in the arts or also does the same thing. But I feel like if I were engaged to like a doctor and I went, rehearsal happened and I said this and then they said this, that the doctor would not understand what I was saying or what I was trying to communicate. But Dolphin goes, oh yeah, you might try communicating it this way. And I go, that makes sense. Awesome. Thank you. So mutual understanding, I guess, and support. Having somebody, he makes the last show I directed, any of the actors could tell you, like, I would be here. I would be at my laptop for like 10 hours a day, and Dalton would come in periodically with like plates of food and like coffee and tea and like set them down at my desk and be like, here you go. And I don't know what I would do without somebody who could support me by feeding me in my times of overwork, and vice versa. If he's in a show or if he's really busy with finals, like, I bring him dinner. So we have a really nice partnership in that way.
Yay. All right. I want to go to the last thing, this new project you have in the works. Stage Cat Gifts. What's that?
All right. Stage Cat Gifts. It's going to be a merchandise company. Basically, I don't know if anyone who's been involved with theater can relate to the idea of opening night gifts. They're a big thing in my experience. Stage managers often get gifts for the cast. Directors might get gifts for the cast. You might get gifts for the director. And Stage Cat Gifts is going to be your one-stop shop to get opening night gifts. I'm in the process of making like personalized opening night cards with personalized graphics for shows. So you can get a card for like everyone from the stage manager to the lighting designer to the technicians, like all in one stop. I'm looking into making my own tea bags, because I feel like when you're performing, a lot of times your throat might get a little scratchy and you need like a nice calming tea bag. So I'm looking at making my own like little tea bag blends that you can get embossed pencils, like pencils that say the name of the show or the name of like the actor and the role that they played. So you can personalize like pencils for like the actor or the person that you want to get them for. Merch, like t-shirts, sweatshirts that can all be printed with the show's logo or the production company. Specific names. I'm looking at getting some mugs, stickers, personalized stickers. So like you could theoretically get like a little gift basket with a personalized pencil, mug, tea bag, and t-shirt and a sticker, and give it to anyone in the show company that you like want to support or want to thank for their hard work. And as opposed to going to all these different stores trying to get like all these things or find the perfect gift, like you can all get it in this one place. And I'm hoping that proceeds from Stage Cat Gifts and more can help fund Drawing Cats and allow me to really be able to pay actors and playwrights and designers a livable wage for working with us, and help grow the company and be able to do some bigger and better things in the future. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I love it. All right, well, that's all the time we have, folks. Thank you so much, Sarah. And dear listeners, thanks for choosing the Badass Lady Folk podcast. I know you have so many choices for your podcasts and other forms of entertainment and content, more than ever in the history of humankind. I'm your host, Christine Sloan Stoddard. You can find out more about me and Quail Bell Press and Productions in the show notes. Tune in next time.